This is Support is Sexy, episode 182, with Eveyln Frison, co-founder and brand director of Pivotte Studio. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And today I'm excited about our guest, Miss Evelyn. And Evelyn is the co-founder with her business partner, Yehua, of a great clothing company called Pivotte Studio. And Pivotte Studio is all about fashion and function, and using technology within clothing to be able to create clothing that is stylish, of course, but that is really for women on the go. So most of us, as Evelyn says in this episode, transition from different parts of our life throughout one day. So you may be at the office, and then you might be rock climbing, and then you may be with the kids, and then you may be at yoga practice, and then you may be in a business meeting. It just goes from one place to the other, and then you may jump on a plane. You need clothing that moves with you, flows with you. Pivotte Studio is a clothing line that they created for that woman. But in this episode, along with talking about the business and her journey with the business, I love that Evelyn opens up and shares her journey with personal development as an entrepreneur. Many have said, and I have certainly said, entrepreneurship is one of the best personal development journeys that you will ever go on. It will truly show you what you are made of. And Evelyn does share with us things that she has learned throughout her journey since they launched Pivotte Studio in 2015. So in addition to that part of the journey, what you'll hear from Evelyn is key conversations you should have with your business partner before you start your business. This was excellent advice, a great tip. Also, what makes a business partnership work, how to resolve conflicts between partners, the importance of regular check-ins with your business partner, getting clear on your message for your business, practice saying your message and your brand proposition out loud. Again, great advice. Remembering that as a startup, you're going to continuously evolve. Be okay with letting an idea go when you know it's not working. We've talked about that before on the podcast. Don't be too precious about your ideas. You got to know when to let it go because, as Evelyn says, you can always come back to it. The importance of having a mentor who gives you feedback and helps you build confidence. How personal development, as we said, plays a role in entrepreneurship, and how confidence is key to being a successful entrepreneur. And Evelyn talks about how that confidence can be nurtured within you. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode, chock full of information, great resources too. Honestly, I know I always say this, but truly great resources. So be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com and search Evelyn, Evelyn. You'll see her show notes page with the resources mentioned there and a special discount that Pivotte Studio is offering to Support is Sexy podcast listeners. So be sure to go check that out after you listen to this episode. All right. So without further ado, Eveyln Frison. So Evelyn, thank you so much for joining me for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
And I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Of course. Now, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
That's a really hard question to answer. I'm going to give you a story. I'll try to make it quick. I thought it was rather recent, actually. I thought it was probably about 2 years ago when I had this idea for something that I wanted to be made. And that has come into fruition. That is my current brand, which is Pivotte, which we can get to later. But I was actually talking to a childhood friend recently who I'd reconnected with after many years of being separated. And she was bringing up some stories about how I've actually always been very entrepreneurial in my thinking. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember these, which is kind of funny. But when we were in high school, in ninth grade, actually, we talked about forming a sort of babysitters club where we would vet and hire babysitters and have this organization that parents in the neighborhood could rely on. And I have not taken that direction, but I thought that was a really funny story. So apparently my entrepreneurial spirit started earlier than I thought.
And it's so funny that, as you said, it's there when you don't even realize it was there or some version of it was there.
Yeah, I've been thinking through that a lot because once she got me thinking about that, I then did realize that I've always been involved in small personal projects that I did try to turn into a business.
Mm-hmm.
So I did start babysitting at a very early age. So I've been working since maybe 12, doing small things for neighbors and for my parents, just for, pocket change, basically. But it got to a point where now that she sort of refreshed my memory, I got into like arts and crafts and doing like beading work and stuff. And I would try to sell that at school.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I would say that was probably around the same age, like 12 or 13. And so to your point, some of these memories, just resurface, I guess, when you're going through this process. But perhaps it's always been there.
Are your parents entrepreneurs or?
No, I think that's actually an influence, that the fact that they're not. They are very, very risk averse people, actually. So to give you a little bit of my background, I grew up in a military family traveling the world. And there are pros and cons to this lifestyle, but I do think it informed my sense of curiosity, created my ability to adapt to new environments and situations quickly, and has given me the foundation for flexible thinking, things like, thinking outside the box, or thinking outside of the parameters of anything that's traditional.
Mm-hmm.
But the military lifestyle is like more of a, like I said, a risk averse or sort of like
by the rules.
By the rules, there's definitely a very specific path. It's often a very clear path, and there's unpredictable events that happen. But for the most part, it is sort of a by the book situation, and they deeply value having a path and having security and being responsible. And I seem to have gone the completely other direction. So
right.
Sometimes, to be very upfront and honest, it's been difficult to explain why I'm doing what I am doing. And they've been supportive, but I think that they think I'm a little crazy.
Mm-hmm. I always say with entrepreneurs, you have to find people who support your kind of crazy. Because you are a little crazy. It's okay. Yeah, we all are.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So what was the first, well, let me ask, when you first went to school or started out on your career path, did you have the sense at that point that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or were you headed in a different direction?
No, I was headed in a very different direction. So I went to school and actually, I'll start from the beginning. I went to school and I was involved in ROTC at the time. Coming from the military background, I was used to that lifestyle. I was interested in it. I do think that there are a lot of interesting things about pursuing that. But I went to school. I was in Army ROTC, and I was
studying. What school did you go to?
University of Colorado in Boulder.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started there. I started in the business school, and over the next few years, I sort of kind of changed direction. I wouldn't say it was a huge jump, but I ended up studying advertising and then minoring in business, and I left ROTC. But I thought, I was going to get out of school and go into a big ad agency and sort of like work my way up the corporate ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not the clear-cut path that I took. I would say that my career has come with a lot of surprises. And this is a podcast, so I can't show you, but there is this one graph that sticks out in my mind where, it's a linear graph, and it shows you what you think your career is going to look like. And it's this linear upward, arrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next image is where it shows you what your career actually looks like. And it's that arrow going up, and then all of a sudden it takes a dip down, and then it loops around, and then it, takes a big giant, it goes back up. And I feel like that is very descriptive of how I've proceeded with my career.
If you happen to have a copy of that graph or anything, if you want to share it with me, I'll post it on your show notes page so people can see it.
Oh, I can totally do that.
Oh, great. Okay, fantastic. Because it sounds very familiar. It certainly was my experience too.
Yeah, actually, I was telling someone else about it the other day, and they immediately pulled it up. It was something they saved, so I can't take credit for it, but I do know that people, it's resonated with many, many people.
So at what point on the graph and on your journey did you sort of do the loop and decide it's time for me to try entrepreneurship?
It it doesn't seem so deliberate when I think about it, although that has to be a factor when you are starting something, obviously. But I think I was working at a boutique integrated marketing agency, and I had started to branch off and do some consulting work on the side as well. And I was running all over the city, basically. And the way that I started to think about things was, I have this lifestyle. It's a little crazy. I'm always running around from one thing to another. And my clothing can't keep up with me. Women's clothing is traditionally very delicate, very high maintenance, very restrictive. And I was just uncomfortable a lot. Simultaneous to that, my friend and business partner, Yehua, she was working for a major fashion label in China, and she had to go to a lot of client meetings across the world. And so she was on the plane a lot. So she was having some of the same frustrations with comfort, but needing to look very put together and being needing to look very prepared and ready to jump into anything. And so we basically shared these frustrations with each other, and that was sort of how the seed was planted for the line that we now have.
So at what point did you both say, you know what, after you're having these discussions, did you say, we should start something? Because it sounds like you both had careers that were moving along, and then to decide we're going to take this risk and try to create something of our own. Or at that point, maybe it didn't feel like a risk. Maybe it was just, we need to create something to, satisfy this gap in our lifestyles.
Well, I can address that second part really quickly. It does definitely feel like a big risk. As I noted, I come from a family that definitely is a little bit more risk averse in many situations. And doing anything outside the box would have felt a little bit risky. But to go back to the first part of the question, I remember this very, very well. We had probably been having conversations about it for maybe 3 to 6 months. And then we even started to talk about what a plan would look like and put a timeline against that. And then I remember, actually, I was on Skype with her, and we had this conversation where we said, okay, if you're going to back out, today is the day to back out. And it's totally fine. We can walk away from this. We won't be angry at each other. We'll understand this is a big risk, going back to that. But tomorrow, if we don't back out, we're both putting in our personal money to start this thing into a shared bank account. So it was a very, very deliberate conversation. We both decided to take the plunge, and I'm speaking on her behalf here, but I can attest to the fact that we both are very grateful that we decided to pursue it.
I think it's brilliant that you both decided to have that conversation from the very beginning and give each other the opportunity to say, okay, this is it. If you're going to back out, now is the time. And then we're going all in. If not, because from what I've been told of people who have partnerships, I'm not in one, but sometimes you both jump in and you're not really clear if you're both, or in the beginning, maybe you are both have the same enthusiasm about it. But then along the way, one person starts to have those doubts and feels like it's easier to drop out than if you had that conversation from the beginning, sort of like a verbal contract of we're both all in.
Yeah, definitely. I would say one of the special things about working with Yehua is that we're both very, very honest with each other, and we're both very communicative. And people do ask us about this all the time. So Yehua is like one of my best friends. We've known each other since we were in high school, actually. Okay. So a lot of people say, don't go into business with your best friend, or, it's going to cause a lot of complications. But my experience this has just been incredible. Like I'm so happy that I got to share this part of my life with her. And I will say what makes it work, though, probably like any other relationship, is that we're extremely honest. I think that sometimes it's shocking, actually, for other people, because They've seen us have very, very honest and open conversations, or, sometimes we disagree and things get a little heated, but because we know each other very well and we know that it comes from a good place and we know we're working towards the same thing, it makes those conversations easy to have, it's easy to come to a resolution with those conversations. And so I would say that, we've consistently checked in with each other. We consult each other before we make any really big decisions. Sometimes we're not on the same page, but as I said, we come to a resolution about that. And so I do think that it's absolutely necessary to have that conversation like we did, where it was like, okay, like you can back out, like no problems, but we're going to do this, but also put a time limit on that, right? Like say like in 6 months, we're going to check in again, have the same conversation, be really honest about what's working, what's not. And we consistently do that. And I think that's really important. In addition to that initial conversation is the check-ins.
That's great. And then when you do have, I know every conflict is different and requires a different resolution, but how do you handle that since it's just two of you? It's not like one person could be, quote unquote, outvoted if there were three of you. How do you handle your conflicts?
So when we started the brand, this was a conversation even before anything was produced. We sat down and divvied up responsibilities. And we were very clear about what each person was responsible for. Mm-hmm. And so we were very clear about that. We were very clear about the fact that the other person should always be consulted for more major decisions. They should have a voice. They should have input. But if there is a disagreement, the person who is responsible for that set of tasks gets final say. So just to give a concrete example, I'm in charge of all marketing. And so I'm in charge of analyzing marketing opportunities, discussing them with her. And then if we have disagreements, if I say we should do this and she says no, I actually do get final say on it. Mm-hmm. And that system has worked so far. Like I said earlier, there are times where there are disagreements, and sometimes it even gets into heated disagreements. But because we had that system in place beforehand, at a certain point, you can't say anything. You say, okay, like this is on you then if it fails. And then you just have to stay with that and you move forward.
And you know each other as people, not just partners. Like you said, you grew up together. So you do know that it's coming from a place of you both want each other to win, I would think.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. I think another factor with that, just to expand a little bit, is that we are very, very different. We're different like personality-wise. We're different like skill set and professional wise. And I think that's only enhanced our partnership. And so because we keep that in mind, and then it just helps us work through problems.
Is it, does being different also help you complement each other? Like you're good at one thing and she's good at another, or you're good at a set of things and she's good at another set of things?
Yeah, definitely. That's that has been a very instrumental part of developing our business. We just look at things differently. And so having a different perspective does change some of our objectives sometimes, or the way that we go about managing those objectives. And getting things done, that's definitely been very instrumental, having that different set of skills. So, for example, I come from a marketing background, and she comes from the fashion background. So I basically would never have anything to market if she wasn't able to produce the line. Mm-hmm. And on the flip side, you can produce a line, but if you don't have at least a decent sense of marketing, it'll never get sold. So we definitely, that the complementary skill set is an absolute must.
So tell us about Pivotte. First, how did you come up with the name? And then what was the first step after you had your conversations, you decided you're both all in?
Sure. So Pivotte is low maintenance clothing for high performing women. Our mission is to help you build a wardrobe that inspires confidence. We do this through providing stylish, functional, and comfortable clothing. In terms of coming up with a name, I could actually go on and on about this from like a marketing standpoint. But the basic process was that we wanted the name. You have a lot of choices when you're deciding on a name. You could actually use someone's real name. So many fashion designers do that, for example. Or you can make up a word, or you can use a word that exists that kind of symbolizes or represents some of your brand values. So we looked at all these different categories of options, and then we did determine a lot of names under those categories. And then, we just went through Googling those names and seeing if they already existed or not. And we also used the trademark system, the U.S. trademark system, to see if they existed in there as well. And that narrows things down pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. I've been through that.
Yeah, so that narrows things down pretty fast. But we did have a few options. And we went with Pivotte because we felt that the name really represented the value of what we wanted to bring through the clothing. So what I mean by that is our clothing is functional, and it allows, it's very versatile. It allows women who wear it to change roles or environments very quickly, but stay looking put together. And really, it came from this idea of the entrepreneurial term, right, which is to pivot. But I find that in interviewing women, so we held several focus groups before we launched the business, many women feel that they have to pivot several times throughout the day. Mm-hmm. They might have this professional self, and then they have to go home and be a wife or a girlfriend or a mother. Or they might have like an after work event in which, their angle is a little bit different than being at work. Or they have an after work activity with friends. But whatever the case, like most women actually move throughout like 5 or 6 roles in a day. And so the name was very much influenced by the fact of how people move throughout or how women specifically move throughout the world.
Excellent. And now did you launch in 2015 or did you guys launch before that? Was it 2015?
Yes. So we launched in 2015 with a Kickstarter.
Right.
So we were very fortunate, but the Kickstarter was successful. Mm-hmm. And so we built on that success, and now we're an e-commerce business.
And you raised $30,000 through Kickstarter, right? Or your goal was $30,000.
Our goal was $30,000, and then we raised 151%, so a little over $45,000 with that initiative.
And did that give you the money for production to do the first capsule collection?
Yes. So we raised funds so that we could go through the first round of production, which we did, and we launched with several items, actually, some tops and bottoms, and we are very fortunate in the fact that actually sold out. So
great. And through your website primarily, is that how you sell the products?
Some of that was the Kickstarter orders, mm-hmm. and then the rest of it was e-commerce business. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Now, what would you say, or how would you say, I should say, technology plays a role in your clothing? Because I know there are things about it, even the way it's designed, that are different than the average pair of pants or a jacket and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I would say the most prominent factor that comes to mind with that is we are very, very careful about which fabrics we choose. So we look for very advanced fabrics that enhance comfort, but are also fit for the aesthetic that we're going for. And then additionally, on top of that, we do look for fabrics that are eco-friendly or at least more sustainable. And so all three of those factors combined, if that's the criteria, then there are more limited options in some ways. I do think that technology is providing us with more and more options every day. And even in the few years of doing this business, we can see that. Now we have more options than we did when we started, but the technology that goes into making our fabrics is crucial to how our clothing performs. So to talk about that a little bit, because you were asking about how it's constructed and like what is the functionality, we use fabric that really allows for a wide range of motion. So that sounds really technical, but basically what I'm trying to say is half of our clothing is made with this proprietary tailored tech fabric, which looks extremely tailored. So it's something that you can wear to the office, but it wears more like a legging or wears more like a comfortable a comfortable top. It's extremely stretchy. The retention is amazing. In some cases, we have water resistance, stain resistance, all these different factors that go into making it a very comfortable piece. So those are some of the things that we thought of when we were choosing, once again, going back to the choice of fabrics. On the other side of things, like the construction was also really detailed in how we built that out. So what I mean by that is the way that some of the seams are placed allows for an additional range of movement, which just comes down to, again, like a deeper sense of comfort when you're wearing the clothing. But all those details have been very thought out. And technology was a huge part of that, from the fabric choice to using machines that can construct the garments in the way that we wanted them to be constructed. And then, the way that we sell it too. We are a digital first business. So technology has played a huge role in how we present ourselves online and how people can shop for us and how we communicate with our customers. And we want to explore that even more. We do know that it's such a crucial part of our business that we need to get even better at that. So that's what some of our goals are in the next year.
How did you come up with the decision to be a digital first company? I actually think this might be my first time hearing a fashion brand say that. Usually fashion is sort of slower to adapt, even though I know you're very new and aware of how technology plays a role. But in what ways did you decide we're going to be a digital first business? Or in what ways have you decided to be a digital first business? Does that mean being very active on social media? Does that mean something else?
In terms of being a digital first business, I think what I first meant by that is a direct to consumer business.
Okay.
So when you're a direct to consumer business, being online is definitely a huge part of how you structure the business and how you build a brand. So that comes back to the e-commerce platform that you use and how you design your website and how you optimize those things. It comes down to the communication, so the use of social media as well as email to do outreach to your consumers and potential consumers. It comes down to things too, like even logistics, right? So what's the technology behind the warehouses that you're using and getting clothes out to the people who are purchasing them in a very quick and efficient way. So those are all things that we're looking at. I think you asked why it was like why we decided to do that. Basically, we want to be a very experimental brand. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's easiest to be experimental online currently because the barrier to entry is a lot lower. So when you start talking about retail spaces or physical spaces, that does require a different strategy, number one. It also requires a different level of investment. And so in order to test and to reiterate and be able to listen to our customers and optimize our process and our products, digital first just made sense.
Makes sense to me. It sounds good. So what would you say has been the biggest challenge or lesson that you've learned in the past couple of years since 2015 of launching the business?
I'm sorry, did you say what was been the biggest challenges?
Mm-hmm, the biggest challenge or lesson that you've learned in the past couple of years with the business. I know in entrepreneurship, especially those first few years, there are many, but if there's one that you can think of that you want to share.
Sure. I have like you said, my mind just went in 10 different directions.
I know how it is.
I can think of many.
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm very lucky that my partner is an expert when it comes to fashion. That is her area. That is her area of expertise. But I wish I had a better understanding of the fashion industry before I got into the business. I was thrown into it and I'm learning and I'm learning fast. But for example, I didn't fully understand how things actually got made. And I didn't understand the timing, the scheduling, the production cycles that go with that. And so I've had to learn how to think through that and think very far in advance. I've always been a planner, but when you're doing fashion, you do need to plan like even further in advance than I was used to doing. And coordinating that with a marketing plan and the outlook for that, that was pretty challenging. So I kind of wish I had brushed up on that in a more substantial way before just diving headfirst. I think it would have helped me with some of my decision making as I move forward. Some other things, I mean, like I can go on, so you might just have to cut me off.
Okay, no, go ahead.
I think that being able to edit and being able to focus is something I've had to learn. And I don't actually mean that in my day to day. Like I'm pretty good about sitting down and hammering out the work that I need to do on any given day. But it's more about your messaging actually, and like really focusing on who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and your sort of value prop, and like being able to communicate that very, very clearly and very consistently.
Sort of like your brand story and your why.
Yeah. So I would say that's been a challenge for several reasons. Number one, I think as a founder, you have so much ambition for your brand, and you're taught to look, 5 and 10 years down the road. And so when you're doing that, sometimes you can become a little scatterbrained because there's so many opportunities that you can take, right? And it requires a lot of discipline to edit those out. And so that's what I meant sort of by focusing and editing. It's like focusing on the things that will get your business to the next level and not trying to do everything all at once. That's super important. And that's something I'm still learning day by day. So,
how do you manage that? Do you both kind of help balance each other or catch each other? Like, oh, you're looking at shiny apples, as we call them. You're like, shiny apple syndrome. You're going after the shiny apple. How do you keep each other sort of focused in that way?
I think it comes back to that sense of communication that I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
My partner and I are really good about that. So that definitely helps. I think there was another thing I wanted to say about that, which is, that definitely helps. But again, this is a work in progress. So this is like another challenge that we've been working through that's related, which is going back to the messaging and stuff. It's you're going to evolve. Like as a startup, like where you start with is definitely not where you're going to end up. And there is no actual sense of ending up. Like you're just going to continue to evolve and optimize throughout time. And I think that it's been a challenge to decide how to evolve, right? So what we started with, we knew we had to change because as a brand, as a marketer, you should be staying close to your customers and market feedback. And you have to sort of take that in and decide how you want to move forward. And you have to be aware if your message and if your products are resonating with people, and if they're not to the degree that you want them to be, you do have to, again, change and evolve. And so one of the challenges that I've been dealing with is evolving our value proposition so that it's like crystal clear. And it might still continue to evolve. But to give you a concrete example, Pivotte used to be a little bit different the way we presented it. We were like, it's multifunctional clothing for women on the go. So we tried that. And then we also tried like multifunctional clothing through unrestricted movement, advanced fabrics, easy care, and high quality. And like, those weren't resonating with people because they didn't understand what we were trying to say. And so now we're trying something else, which does seem to stick and we get good response to, but that was a huge challenge. Like, how do you describe your brand to other people is a huge challenge.
How did you get the feedback from people? Did you have more focus groups, or did you sort of just see that was there some other way that you got the sense that it wasn't resonating or connecting the message?
You know what actually is the most effective is to go to a lot of events. So I'm very fortunate. I live in New York City and I have access to a lot of events around the city. And I would go to these events and people inevitably ask you, what you do. And then I would try to explain it. And I always stumbled over my words. And I think that is definitely the first sign that perhaps it's not working. If you yourself can't memorize it, then it's not going to work for your customers because they have less patience than you do in trying to explain something or think through it or get it. So I would say, as you can tell, I'm pretty chatty. So I don't necessarily want to advocate that people become as chatty as me, but I basically just went out there and tested it myself by talking to people and just noticing the reactions, or if they were like, wait, what? What do you do? Then I would be like, oh, this clearly isn't working. So I just went out there in the real world and talked to people and tested it.
I think that's such great advice. One, talking to other people about it, but what you said before that, just this idea of saying it out loud and see if you even feel comfortable saying it. Or, I've done that before where if I write it out, I'm a writer, so writing it, I can do it beautifully, but then I try to say whatever it is out loud and it's like, that actually doesn't make sense, or it's difficult for me to say, or I'm stumbling through it, or I need to get clearer with it. So I think that's excellent advice for people just to practice that and then talking to other people and seeing how they respond to it too.
Definitely. And you should put a time limit on it. I kind of wish I had done this sooner, to be honest, but I kept trying to force it, right? I was like, I can memorize this, I can do this, I don't know what my problem is. And I kept trying to use a particular phrase, and honestly, a year into it, I was like, wait, I still can't memorize this. This is pretty ridiculous. So I kind of wish I had caught on sooner. So if the other end of, or the other piece of advice to tag along with that is, set a time limit on it. If you still can't clearly express what you're trying to say in 3 months, then just move on.
Right. That's interesting. One of the quotes that I pulled from your social media, you guys have great quotes on there. It was, don't get stuck trying to make your first idea work. That applies to careers, relationships, and everything. So sort of what you just talked about of not getting stuck for too long or giving yourself a time limit and knowing when to move on. I was going to ask you, have you ever gotten stuck on an idea that sounds like one example?
Oh, that is definitely an example. And I can probably, my brain again went in 10 different directions because I can think of so many examples. I would say, honestly, this is illustrative of how my partner and I balance each other out, because I do tend to get stuck on things more than she does. I'm like, no, I can make this work. I just have to do this and this and this to it. And I get very tied to ideas and I get very invested in them. And I've learned to be a little bit more experimental in my thinking and being like, okay, that didn't work. We need to change something, right? But she keeps me in check with that because she'll just be like, let it go. We can come back to it, maybe it just needs to marinate longer. Maybe you need to make a few tweaks to it, but it's definitely not working. So let it go. We'll come back to it. And so that's a constant sort of challenge. That's another constant challenge for me, is to remember that it's okay to let things go, because here's the second part of that, because eventually you probably will use that idea or whatever it was, right? It might come out in a different form,
right?
But the fact that it's there doesn't mean you need to use it with such immediacy. You can circle back to it later.
And also, do you think, I've heard this before, people say entrepreneurs have to practice not being precious about their ideas. So sometimes I know for me, some things feel so special to me, or it's such a great idea and I know everyone's going to love it, but then you sort of get that feedback and it's like, this isn't connecting. I don't know. I need to let this go and stop being precious like this, kiss my baby, love my baby kind of thing.
I am that 150%. And my friends would tell you, and my colleagues would tell you that I think it's just, I get very passionate about ideas and I get very tied to them. And so I am lucky to have not only my friend and business partner be the person that checks me with that kind of stuff or keeps me in line with that kind of stuff, but actually all my friends are really good at that. So I'm not even joking. Probably once a day, someone's like, "Let it go," and I'm like, "All right, I just gotta let it go." And I've gotten better too, knowing that the second part of the equation, which I mentioned earlier, was you can come back to it, right? Mm-hmm. Just save it for another time, let it marinate, but think of something that's a little bit more helpful in the moment, and then come back to that later. So yeah, I do get stuck with that stuff. But if there's anything I've learned, honestly, is to just keep trying and reiterating and being okay with ambiguity and let things go if it doesn't work, because you can come back to it, or you'll try something else that was like way better.
Right. And do you think, I know you mentioned the brand evolving and the story evolving over time. Do you think too, you and your business partner evolve as people as well? Or do you feel like that's been a part of your entrepreneurial journey, just learning things about yourself? I ask because a lot of the women that I talk to just talk about entrepreneurship being such a journey in personal development as well.
Yes, definitely. I don't know how it wouldn't factor into that. So kind of going back to your, I'll start here, like going back to what you mentioned about, being tied to your ideas, like they're very, very precious. I think that's just something I've always had that attitude. And like I told you, I'm still working on it, but I think I've become so much better. And it's actually made me like a better person because it's influenced my personal thinking, not only my business decisions. And so as a person, this is very personal, but like as a person, I will get hung up on things. And I think that going through this business and the launch of this business and entrepreneurship in general, I learned to just let everything that's unimportant go. Or at least I'm much better at it. And so it's made me a better business person, honestly, because I'm not wasting time, right? Like holding ideas that won't work. But personally, I think people like to be around me a little bit more.
That's good.
Not so like robotic and structured and so like held to things with like, such conviction. I think that I'm a little bit more easygoing actually than I used to be several years ago. So it's definitely influenced me that way.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that part of yourself with us.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. So another thing I noticed on social media for Pivotte Studio on Twitter, you guys recommend books that you're, I guess, either reading or have read, business books, all kinds of different topics. So I wanted to ask you, is there a book that has been helpful to you in your business or otherwise that you would recommend, if you could recommend one book to our readers that you think they should read?
Oh, wow.
I know I put you on the spot, but I just happened to see that.
Well, I think it just depends on what your goals are, right? I actually advocate reading anything, period. I think that reading a variety of subjects or genres or topics will overall enhance what you're trying to do, because as an entrepreneur, you should be very aware socially, culturally, politically. You just need to be aware of what's going on in the world. And so I advocate reading anything that basically interests you and to balance that with things that you should read. And by should, I just mean like if you know you're weak in certain areas, definitely look for books or for essays or guides or websites that can help you address that lack of skills or knowledge in a certain area. Regarding one book, I mean, like I said, it kind of depends on goals, because like if you're weak in marketing, I could recommend a marketing book, or like if you want to think of a new business, like that's a different type of book entirely.
So what about marketing, since that's your area of expertise?
Sure. So I can't remember the name of this book, but it is, I could send it to you after. I know that's not particularly helpful, but it's basically an outline of marketing basics. And the way that the information is presented is very clear cut. And it emphasizes the areas that I think are extremely important. So for example, the book really emphasizes getting to know your target audience and continually checking in with them, and like how everything you do should come back to the idea of your target audience. And so that's one I would recommend for people who have no marketing background. And I know the name of it is escaping me right now, but I can definitely send that to you.
No, that'd be great. And I'll have a link to it so everybody can go check it out and see. That's perfect. That'll be good. So what would you say your support network looks like?
My support network, let's see. I have a lot of thoughts on just like everything. I've had a lot of thoughts on all these questions. My support network. I am really lucky to have an extremely strong support network. This is made up of several people and several organizations. I'll start off with actually some of the people that have been instrumental in my life. So, for example, my support network, definitely my parents. I did mention earlier that they kind of think I'm crazy and they don't quite understand what I'm doing, but they are supportive in their own way. You know, they don't historically. They're supportive because they've helped me develop a sense of discipline that I wouldn't have gotten through any other channel, I think, in my life. Like, you know, your parents set the foundation for who you are. And like, my parents do not tolerate laziness. So at all. So I think the sense of discipline I got from them and continue to get from them is definitely a type of support that I get from them. My friends are definitely my support system. So I'm going to give a little shout out here to Max, Jenny, Christine, Karen. They know who they are. But they support me sort of emotionally, professionally when I've had like professional questions. And they've been huge supporters of the brand in more ways than one. And so these are some people in my life that I can go to with anything. My support network obviously includes one of my best friends and business partner, Yehua Yang, who's the co-founder of this line. For lack of a better description, she's like the peanut butter to my jelly. She really keeps me in check, which I've talked a little bit about today. And I would say some other people, like previous bosses, actually. So Diane Meyer was a woman I worked for, and she was very instrumental in my professional and personal development. She gave me the space to grow into my confidence, my sense of confidence. And just a note about this right here, because this is about entrepreneurship. I think that establishing your sense of confidence is like extremely important to doing this kind of work. So just a small note about that. And somebody else who's also been very instrumental to my professional and personal development is someone I worked with at New Republic, who's Erica. And she was my previous boss, but now she's the founder and owner of Tactile, which is a company that helps ambitious female leaders build ambitious brands. So given that is her goal, she definitely provides a lot of support, and like she provides a lot of insight for me when I have questions that are related to growing my brand. So I'm lucky to have a really strong support network, and I'm not sure I could do what I'm doing without them.
Excellent. All right. So I have a hard question for you.
Sure.
If you think over your life and career, and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be, and what would you say?
That is tough. I only get one?
Just one.
I would say, oh man, that's so hard. I would have to go with someone that I did already mention, Diane Meyer. She was the principal of Meyer Advertising, which is the small integrated marketing agency that I mentioned a while back. And I specifically just mentioned her because I feel that she was very instrumental in my professional and personal development. I feel like she really took a chance on me because, to be completely honest, I think for a majority of my career until recently, I haven't had a strong sense of confidence. And when I arrived to work with her, I think that was still very much part of, to put it bluntly, like when I arrived on her doorstep, I didn't really like have a strong sense of confidence. And she gave me, I mentioned this earlier, but she gave me the space to grow into my confidence, and she was very encouraging, and she has helped me work through so many different marketing problems that I can really go to her with any question. And that's personal too. I can go to her with any professional or personal question. And when I did do that, she helped me work through them in a way that was very substantial and really took a lot of time and patience on her part. And I think because of that, I am not saying I'm perfect at this, and I don't even know what that would mean anyway, but I consider myself to be a pretty confident person now. And I would say that that is mostly because of her.
And did she do that by asking you certain questions and getting you to think about it in a certain way, do you think? Or was it her actually saying to you, you can do this? Or was it a combination of both? And was it confidence in yourself or in the work that you were doing, or both?
It is all of the above. So I think that she, once again, was extremely patient. And so when I did ask her questions, she would walk me through feedback, right? Mm-hmm. But she also, to your point, like, she also provided probing questions. And like, sometimes she would start there, because I think from her end, she did want me to have me think through things in a certain way first. And then but it was also information that she needed to provide, or to be provided with, in order to answer the question in a really strong way, or in a really deep way. And so the questions that she asked definitely allowed me to explore my own thoughts on something, and then she'd follow up and sort of bring in additional points, or sometimes completely change my perspective, but that was the point of the exercise, right? Mm-hmm. So she was really good about balancing that. And then I think the second part to your question was what?
The second part was it confidence in your work or confidence in yourself, or was it both? Because you mentioned you felt like when you first showed up on her doorstep, you didn't have the confidence.
Yeah, I think also there again, it was both. I think that when I did something well, that was communicated, and I actually hadn't been in a lot of workspaces where that was done. So that was like something new to me, which changed my whole professional outlook on, and that's like a whole different story. But she actually provided really positive reinforcement. And when the work was like not up to par and not great, she would tell me that too. But the way she did that was super important, where it didn't make me feel like a failure, but instead said, you can do better. And it was like the confidence. I think a lot of my confidence came from that. Like, okay, yeah, maybe I didn't give this my all, or maybe, I just kind of goofed and like didn't do this right. But I know how to correct it. And I think confidence isn't about knowing what to do all the time and doing things right. It's actually about having the confidence to know that you can take something, finish it, and if it doesn't work, make it better. Or like, you know how to problem solve. I think that's actually a big factor of that. But she was really good about providing positive reinforcement, and then constructive criticism in a way that was digestible. And I will say that now I went from being somebody who had a hard time taking criticism to like, I think that is one of my best attributes now, where like I can handle constructive criticism like nobody else. Like it does not faze me, because I know it's only going to make me stronger. And she gave that to me.
Excellent. So tell us how we can support you. The website, if it's the website, of course, I'll have links to everything and the great resources that you mentioned, but website, social media, anything else you want us to know about?
It's funny that this conversation has focused so much on confidence. I think that if anything, maybe if you communicate our brand, that while we are a fashion brand, our deeper purpose is to help people create wardrobes that instill confidence, and basically maybe just spread that message out, because so much of how we move through the world is dependent on the clothing that we wear. Actually, if I wear a really tight pencil skirt and I can't walk very fast, that affects like how I move through the city, right? Mm-hmm. But when I wear our clothing, I know it's very reliable. Like I know I'm going to look polished. I know I can move comfortably, and that actually affects how I talk to people. It affects how I hold myself in meetings, and I know it sounds cheesy, and I know that I am biased, obviously, but like, wearing our clothing actually does provide me with a sense of confidence in the workplace that I haven't had when I wear more like traditional items. And I think that our overall message is that women should focus on the goals that matter, focus on the activities that matter, and like clothing can actually help with that.
Right. And not have to worry about your clothes feeling restrictive.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I know also that you were offering a discount for Support is Sexy listeners who go to your website and buy something.
Yes, definitely. So I believe the discount code is Support is Sexy.
Yay.
Yeah, so everyone can definitely check in with us and use that code for 15% off.
And it's at pivotstudio.com, right?
Yes.
Pivotte. And everyone listening, I'll have a link, but just in case you hear it and you want to go right away, pivotstudio.com. Excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So it was so great to talk to you, Evelyn. I appreciate your transparency and honesty about your journey as well. I think it's going to be very helpful for people to hear it. And then, of course, about what you're creating. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a good time for me to reflect on everything. And I feel like I need to go back and think about through some of your questions even more. So it's been very helpful for me too.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, before you go, a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything.
A parting piece of advice. I would say that if you have any idea whatsoever that you're interested in trying, to go for it. That whole Nike slogan, just do it. You're not going to regret it. And all it takes is a little digging. So take your idea and Google a little bit about it every day until you uncover the information you need to make any sort of decision, whether that's to proceed with it, to botch it, or to pivot, reiterate on it. I definitely advocate everyone building something that is theirs, going through that process, and to keep trying. If it doesn't work, but you're still curious about other things, keep trying. I think that would be my last parting message.
Excellent. Evelyn, thank you. Hold on for just a second.
Sure.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Evelyn. Thank you so much for listening. Again, you can go to supportissexypodcast.com to find out more about Evelyn, more about Pivotte Studio, to find out about that great discount that she offered Support is Sexy listeners, and to get the great resources mentioned in this episode. Supportissexypodcast.com. Also, before you go, if you are ready to start your business, launch something sexy, do something sexy, really create a sexy business and life, I want you to go to createsomething.sexy.com right now, unless you're driving, of course. Go later. createsomething.sexy.com. Check it out. Please have a look and see if it's right for you. Create Something Sexy is a mastermind that I'm launching in the spring, full of powerful, an intimate group, I should say, of powerful, driven women who are creating something sexy in their own lives. Whether that's a new business, some other type of transition, we are going to get together, support each other in moving forward, and create the lives, businesses, careers that we dream of. The best way to do that is to surround yourself with people who are moving forward, not necessarily all in the same direction, but moving forward, who want to support you and who want to see you win. CreateSomethingSexy.com. Go check it out. See if it's right for you. Masterminds are an excellent way to connect with people who are up to something, just as you are. I belonged to a mastermind last year, and it was incredible for me and for my business. So the goal is to get you around some people who can help you move forward. And I keep saying, whether it's with me or with someone else, I just want you to have support, because I'm all about it, because support is sexy. So go to createsomething.sexy.com, check it out, see if it's right for you. If so, click the button. I will email you the entry form. It's very quick and easy, just 7 questions in about 7 minutes. Answer those and we'll hop on the phone and we'll chat about it. All right, so I hope to hear from you. CreateSomethingSexy.com. As always, I'm thrilled to have you here. I so appreciate you listening. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.